Hi guys, it's Aoife here with a weekly wrap up from the last 2 weeks, because the week before last I only read one book during the week, so I decided there's no point in doing a wrap up, so I decided to just include that in this. So the first book I've read over the past 2 weeks is City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. This is a Middle Eastern historical fantasy book, and it is based about a girl called Nari who lives in the city of Cairo, and she's a little bit of a scam woman in a way. She has this magical ability where she's able to sense people's illnesses, or if they're going to be sick, and sometimes she can heal them as well, or let them know how they can heal themselves. And she takes money off people for this, and people don't know that she's actually magic or anything like that. And then one day something goes wrong in one of her kind of rituals that she does, and she ends up accidentally calling this jinn called Dara. And Nari has never really believed in the jinn. She always thought they were just kind of this fairy tale, this like kind of folklore. So she never actually really believed in this. And then obviously with the appearance of Dara, she has to, actually realise that other than the little bit of magic that she can do, that real magic and magical creatures do exist. And Dara knows that Nari shouldn't have been able to call upon him, and he realises that she might not be completely human, so he takes her to this magical city full of other jinn, and in that city she might be able to find out who she really is, who her parents were, where she really comes from, that kind of thing. And there's a lot of like political intrigue in this book. There's like this ruling family who took power years and years ago. Some people don't really like the way they took power, but they do actually seem to be fairly like good leaders in a lot of ways. So they're not like, like they're not these ruthless, terrible people. But there's a lot of like kind of historical anger there, and then there's just this political intrigue, and Larry's kind of going into the middle of it, and she doesn't really know, she really likes like kind of the friends that she's making in this family, but then she's also obviously likes Dara, who's become her friend, and there's a little bit of romance there. So she's kind of like stuck in the middle a little bit, and she doesn't really know what to do, and there's all this big political game being played out in this book. I enjoyed it, but I did find that it's one of those ones that you really have to fully concentrate on, because there's, as I said, there's a lot of history in it. There's a lot of different names and places and stuff like that, and it can be hard to remember who everyone is and what everyone is, and what they all mean to each other, and I found that could get a little bit complicating at times for me. I did like kind of the setting, and the Middle Eastern setting was really nice, the heat, the food, the colours, what people wore, and I did like the fact that there were these different factions, and there was all these different beliefs in these different factions, in these different types of people, and the type of jinn they all had these kind of different almost like religions and beliefs and stuff like that, and traditions, and I did really enjoy that. But this one just didn't really blow me away the way I had hoped it would. So I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars, but I will definitely be reading on. And yeah, I would definitely be reading on and reading the next one. And I will say, for people who like Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor, I feel like they might like this one as well, because there are a little bit of similarities in it, more so, but this is more adult, where Daughter of Smoke and Bone is YA obviously, and then this is Middle Eastern, and I guess Daughter of Smoke and Bone is a little European in a way, I don't know. But yes, 3.5 out of 5 stars, but I will continue on. After that, I read The Marriage of Opposites by Alice Hoffman. This is a historical fiction about a woman called Rachel, who was the mother of this famous impressionist painter, Camille Pissarro. She was his mother, and this is kind of based around the true story of her. She got married at quite a young age, as people do back then, and they lived in this kind of Caribbean island called St. Thomas, and she got married quite young and had a lot of children, and then she ended up, when she became a widow, and her husband's nephew came over to like take care of the business, because obviously she was a woman, she wasn't allowed to do that. She ended up falling in love like straight away with this nephew, and he fell in love with her even though he was 8 years younger than her, and they decided to have a relationship, and even though everyone in their Jewish community was against it, because technically they said that they were family, because he was her husband's nephew, so technically she was like his aunt and all this, and that meant that they weren't allowed to marry. And we're seeing this kind of, star-crossed lovers kind of thing with this. And this true story did actually happen. And eventually they were able to marry, and they were brought back into the community. But it took years and years and years. And we're kind of hearing Rachel's story. And in the second half of the story, we're hearing more about her son, Camille. And it was good, but it wasn't as good as I found other Alice Hoffman's books. It's probably one of the weaker ones that I've read. I did like Rachel as the character. She's very stubborn and very obstinate, and she always believes in her abilities, which is great to see. And she's a real feminist for the times, I guess, as well. But it was very interesting to see, like, she didn't have a good relationship with her mother, and there were some things that were placed upon her, kind of things that she wasn't allowed to do. And it was interesting to see how history repeated itself in a way, in the way she mothered Camille then. And there are things that she placed upon him that were also placed upon her as a child that she hated, and it was interesting to see how it all repeated itself. And this continues on until Rachel's like in her 90s and very, very old, so It is kind of a long running story, kind of a family history kind of story, but I did enjoy it. I liked kind of it being in this kind of more tropical setting, which was interesting, a little bit different, and again just like seeing how people were at the times. And there's this kind of a subplot in a way, but there's a lot of kind of look upon how people of colour were treated at the time, because technically slavery was illegal, but then the people who came to this island as slaves remained as slaves. They couldn't actually be set free. There was these limitations basically on the slavery in this place, and it was obviously real. And it was just interesting to see how the characters faced up against that and their thoughts on that, and just seeing what it was like at the time, and that was quite interesting, kind of the racism. I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars overall. After that, I finished If Only by Melanie Murphy, which I've done a full book review on, so which I will link down in the description if you haven't seen it. That went up this week. So I won't talk about this too much. I will just say this is a contemporary fiction about a girl called Erin, an Irish girl called Erin. She's living in London, and she's just going through a bad period in her life. She's having, like, she doesn't really know what to do. Her relationship is broken down. She is just stuck in a place where she just doesn't want to be. She is in a place where she didn't think she would be at this age, where she's almost 30. And then she ends up being gifted this magical pendant by her grandmother for her 30th birthday. And this pendant she can use 7 times. And basically what she can do is she can see what her life would have been like if only she made a different decision at a different point in her younger life. So she goes back and sees all these different decisions, like, you know, if only I had stuck to my diet plan in college. And she goes back and sees what her life would have been like if she'd been like this perfect size 6 or size 8 or whatever, because she does suffer from a lot of like self-confidence issues and stuff, and she, like, there are all these kind of different kind of if onlys and romantic dilemmas and stuff like that. I really enjoyed this. I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars overall, and as I said, I won't go into this in too much detail because I do have a full video review of it, and if you want to see that, if you haven't seen it already, I will link it below. I finished an audiobook this week as well. That was Sawkill Girls by Claire LeGrand. This is kind of a thriller slash horror YA, and it's about this island called Sawkill, and this girl called Miriam moves there with her sister Charlotte and her mother after their dad died in this tragic kind of car accident, and they move to this place, and Charlotte ends up becoming friends with this girl called Val, and they find out that there's this kind of history in this island where a lot of girls have gone missing over years and years, and then soon Charlotte ends up going missing, Miriam's sister, and Miriam kind of starts realising that there's this kind of dark entity that seems to live in this island and might be somehow killing these girls, and there's a lot of other things going on. There's the character called Zoe, whose best friend also went missing, and she is kind of determined to kind of uncover the truth of what really happened to her best friend. She kind of is warning Miriam against, you know, becoming friends with Val, because apparently Val and her family are always linked to these girls that have gone missing, but for some reason they've never really been investigated over it. And then Val also has her own kind of storyline going along, where we see her connections with this monster that kind of seems to live on the island, and why she is involved with it and her struggles with that. Overall, this was okay for me. It wasn't as good as I thought it was. I've heard a lot of kind of hype around this book, and I just think it just didn't live up to that hype for me. I felt like it was a little bit too long, and it kind of dragged on a little bit for me. It might have been because I was reading it in audiobook, I don't know. I did enjoy, there is a really nice female-female relationship in this, which I really loved. There were some of these really lovely romantic sexual scenes between them, which you don't see often a lot in books, particularly YA, and just seeing that kind of really healthy sex scenes and consent and all that kind of stuff was really good, particularly between two girls, because as I said, we don't see that often, and hopefully we'll be seeing it more in new books that are being published. And then there's also a sexual representation in this as well, and there's a lot of conversations around that, which I know a lot of people will appreciate, so that was great to see too. There was just something about this book that just didn't click with me. It was just one of those kind of books that just, you know, I just kind of felt a little bit whatever about. I do think this would be really good for some people, but for me, I just wasn't quite mad about it. I will say there are some quite gory scenes in this book that I was like, I actually kind of found hard to listen to at times, and I'm normally pretty much okay with that kind of stuff, but for this one, I don't know, there was just something about it that I was a bit like, oh, I didn't really like it. So yeah, 3 out of 5 stars. I do think this would probably be better for others. I think just for me, this one just didn't click. And then the book I'm reading at the moment, I'm about 60% through, is Ninefox Gambit by Yoon. This is a science fiction novel, and I'm struggling with this one. I don't really know what it is. It's very complicated. It reminds me of Ancillary Justice by Anne Leckie. I know what's going on, but I don't really know what's going on, and it's kind of hard to explain. There's this captain, and she disgraces herself in some way, and then she ends up being commanded to get this fortress back from these enemies. They've like taken this fortress and she's told that she has to go and take it back, and she ends up being connected to this ghost of this commander from years and years and years ago who was like this mass murderer, terrible person, and she's connected to his ghost and no one else can see him and no one else can hear him but her. But there's some ways where she can connect to his ghost and basically get his advice, and he can help her try and overtake this fortress again. But at the same time, people are afraid that she's going to be influenced by him because obviously he's like this crazy madman murderer. And there's all this kind of weird political intrigue going on with it. And I've had to read a couple of different summaries online to try and even figure out what's been going on up until this point where I am. And I think I get it, but I still don't really know. So I'll probably talk about it more next week. I'd hope to finish it by today, but I don't think that's going to happen because I have to go out in a bit. So I'm not sure if I'll get this done today. But yeah, I will talk about it a little bit more next week and hopefully I will understand it a bit more, but I'm not sure. So that's everything I've read. Please let me know what you guys have read. I'll leave a comment down below and I'll see you guys again next time. Bye!